that is interference in Iran's domestic affairs. But that's exactly the argument Iranian government gives. And it is intellectually dishonest, morally wrong, and policy-wise counterproductive not to make the distinction that insisting on Iran's human rights obligations under international treaties is not interfering in domestic affairs. They should stay away from the domestic political scene because they will definitely mess it up, no matter what they do. But to argue and insist on the freedoms of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of being free from torture and so on, everything that Iran is a signatory to, everything that's also in its constitution, everything that its people are so loudly demanding is not interfering. And that is where the foreign policy has to be really rehoned. And I think the Obama people have a very hard time making that understanding. And instead we're seeing they're moving more toward Bush's policies with regard to Iran, where we keep hearing about the sanctions. Again, the Iranian human rights community has been very clear. It is not interested in foreign intervention. It absolutely opposes any military interaction in the country. And that would be the worst thing that can happen to them. Not only because they are proud people and have a very strong sense of their territorial integrity and their nation, but also because they remember 1980 when Iraq invaded Iran and how it started that dark ages that I mentioned in the beginning of my talk, how it started domestic repression in the name of fighting the fifth column of the enemy. And they know that the day that a bullet or a bomb or a match from Israel or United States or any other country is dropped into Iran is the day the government, which is already so repressive, will even many, many fold be more violent toward them. And with regard to sanctions, the issue is that, again, people are under tremendous economic hardships. Any sanctions that targets ordinary people or hurts the general economy will bring the people, will make the government be able to argue that the economic misery and what the situation we're in is the machinations of foreign powers. Now, the other issue about sanctions, which I really don't understand, is that give me one example where it really has worked. Hasn't anyone looked at Iraq under Saddam Hussein from 1991 to 2003? What happened to that country? That country had the best healthcare, the best education relative to the Arab region. And by 2003, the time of the invasion, it had the highest child mortality rate, higher than many underdeveloped African countries. Its civil society was completely disseminated. Did the political power of Saddam Hussein even ebb a little bit during that time? No. And economically, he and his cohorts enriched themselves and were able to rule over a people who were economically deprived and lost many of their social and economic institutions. So why should we want to do that to Iran? I want to ask people who talk about sanctions, crippling sanctions or broad sanctions on Iran. Now, it is somewhat interesting that we hear more and more targeted sanctions, smart sanctions, particularly Revolutionary Guards, and I must admit that I have said that, yes, if you can really hurt the Revolutionary Guards leaders and their economic interests, if you can prove that your sanctions can do that, I think that would be welcome. Those people are raping the country for the economic wealth of it. Much of this is about politics, but much more of it is also about economics and the wealth of Iran due to its natural resources and the flow of cash that goes through the oil industry of that country. So any foreign policy advisor should really wake up to that reality that, number one, Iran's government is not stable right now to be able to be a partner on the nuclear negotiations, and that the human rights issues are of utmost importance in paying attention to through proper venues such as the UN mechanisms. I guess I'm told to finish up here and open for discussion. Thank you.